Support WrestleTalk!
Give us a subscribe.
Does Batista have heat with WWE? I'm Ollie Davis, this is Luke Owen. Welcome to WrestleRamble, and Backlash might be tomorrow. Luke can hardly wait, but right now it's our weekend WrestleRamble show where we sum up the week's news, we do some crap gimmicks, and we take your questions. But we are kicking off with Batista's rather depressing comments about his potential and then scrapped WWE return that was apparently planned at one point for WrestleMania 34 for him to be Ronda Rousey's tag team partner.
Yes, so Dave Meltzer had originally reported that one of the ideas was going to be The Rock. It was going to be The Rock and Rousey versus Hunter and Steph, which is the match they wanted to do after WrestleMania 31 when they shot the angle that they kind of kick-started this whole Ronda Rousey thing, really. But then that sort of fell through because Rock couldn't make the dates. Rock has said that in interviews that, yeah, we really wanted to do it, but we just couldn't work it out.
It's because he's making every movie ever.
Pretty
right
much,
now.
yeah.
Even the movies he's no longer in, he is somehow in control of. Have you seen he's producing John Cena's next movie?
I did not know.
Yeah.
No.
So John Cena will be working for The Rock.
Wow.
What a weird world.
I mean, so impressive is The Rock in Hollywood, and so much clout and pull that man has in Hollywood, that he can get a video game movie made. Like, and those aren't, that's not an easy sell. It really isn't. Do you know how I know? Because I've got a book out.
Oh, come on. Why do I let that in here?
I don't know, I left it in here. I wasn't even planning on doing that. But yeah, you can go buy my book on video game movie adaptations. I don't talk about Rampage there, but there was a Rampage movie that was trying to get made for years. And then The Rock came on, and I was like, oh, I'll do it. And then they got it made. But that's how powerful The Rock is. So anyway, so after The Rock fell through, one of the other names that Dave Meltzer reported was Batista.
This was the second name. So WWE were like, oh, we can't get The Rock. Should we someone give Batista a call?
Yeah,
I've got him on WhatsApp.
So they've
got a group with the old
Evolution.
I nearly called them Fortune.
That's TNA,
I was
mate.
trying to think, what's the group of four people with Ric Flair?
That's
my
Fortune,
mind
yeah.
automatically went for short-lived.
It was Bobby Roode, AJ Styles,
Kazarian.
Kazarian was in that
Ric
group.
Flair.
And wasn't James Storm in the group at one point?
Oh, it wasn't. Didn't really stick to the four-part of that name, did it?
Anyway, so Batista was the second name that was reported, and now Batista has confirmed that it was, in fact, he was on the list. Like, they had a call, they had a conversation, and I'll pass this over to you because this is your news story.
Yeah, this is, well, it's not my news story, it's the internet's, but I've got the quote here, quite a long quote, that I'm going to read in full because it's hilariously depressing.
Oh, bless Batista.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming this was on the press junket for Avengers Infinity War?
One of many.
One of many.
It was with 106.7 The Cub. I don't know how that's a name for something. The way American radio stations work is quite weird.
FM frequency, right?
Yeah, it just sounds weird to my ears, though.
Yeah, 106. What's like, Kiss 10...
But that's the right way round.
Oh, I see what you're saying. It's like dates.
Yeah. So this was Batista talking to that radio show, and he says, this is all insider stuff, and I usually don't share. I'm really an old-school kayfabe guy. So let's unpack that first bit.
Yeah.
I think he likes to think he's an old-school kayfabe guy. But he's done a lot of interviews in the last 3 years openly talking about backstage creative plans and how wrestling is not real.
I was going to say, his interviews with Chris Jericho were quite enlightening in just like, that last run I had was bloody awful, and here's why it was awful. The crowd liked Daniel Bryan too much. That was point number one, essentially. And then there was just multiple points that went after that. So I don't really think he is that much of an old-school kayfabe guy.
Well, I think maybe he was, but then he came back in 2014, and apparently he told Vince, like, I need to be a heel. I want to be a heel. The crowd are going to boo me.
He knew.
But Vince was like, now you're a babyface. Look at you.
Look at the size of you.
You're that animal.
Yeah.
Dave, you're a babyface through and through.
You know, when we were trying to think of like big guys that got over because they were big, maybe Batista is one of those lads.
I think Batista has something, though. He always
had
a
charisma.
a Goldberg-style explosiveness.
Yeah.
Especially when he would
shake them ropes,
yes. So maybe that was what broke him. He was a kayfabe guy before then, but now he's like, screw it. I'm going to expose the business every other movie interview I have.
Now he's just a jaded Hollywood star.
So back to Batista. But they reached out to me, that being WWE, earlier this year to possibly come back and do that thing with Ronda. And I said that I would be willing to do it only if we tease something for me and Hunter to go to Mania next year. And they said, yeah, that would be great. I love that idea. And I said, well, that's great. I'll come back a few times during the year and we'll tease it and we'll work it and we'll milk it. Milk it, Luke. For podcast listeners.
You are doing milking action as if it were a cow.
Really quick milking action. I'm good at the milking. And we'll go to Mania, me and Hunter, next year. Oh, I love that idea. Let's do it. And so we literally talked about that for like 3 weeks. So there was a plan at one point for this year's WWE storylines for Batista to kind of have that part-time big return feel. Like, I get from that, he'll do a Money in the Bank match, he'll do a SummerSlam match, he'll be on a Survivor Series angle, Royal Rumble, all to set up and build towards the Triple H versus Batista match at next year's WrestleMania, which Batista has said forever that's what he wants to go out on.
Is that the match that people really want to see, though? Is that like is that the mouth-watering match that you want to have Batista come back for? Oh, another match with Triple H.
You said you don't get excited for Triple H matches.
Well, that is on the Patreon exclusive podcast, which has just gone live as of this recording. This will have gone up on Saturday, so it's been out for a couple of days. But on that show, I did say that I struggle to get excited for Triple H matches. I always have done. So maybe that is part of that, yeah.
I just feel like Batista...
The Ronda match doesn't count because I was excited for Ronda Rousey.
Batista seems to be coming from such a good place about this. And I just love his performance. When I think of Batista, I now just think of Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy. And in his 2014 comeback, he put over a lot of younger guys. He put over Daniel Bryan in the main event, and he put over The Shield, who would then disband a month afterwards. Another thing that Batista...
it was the night after.
Yeah, oh God, yeah, of course. Another thing that Batista's been very critical about WWE for doing. He was like, well, what's the point of me putting them over if you're gonna beat them the next night, break them up the next night? And I feel like he's done the putting people over thing, and this is what Batista wants. And for a storyline character arc, if you're really into your own wrestling character, I totally see why he would want to do that. And I think there is a poetic justice to Batista starting out in Fortune and then finishing his career fighting Triple H.
Yeah. I mean, all I'm saying is that was a match that I would have been into in 2005, less so in 2019.
Oh, I don't mind it as that big special Triple H attraction. I mean, at least it gets Triple H like away from everyone else for a bit, and other people can breathe. Stephanie won't be burying younger people. She'll be
burying Dave.
Burying Dave until Triple H knocks her off the apron through something. I love that yearly angle that they do. But that was not to be, because then he carries on in the quote. So they talked about it for 3 weeks. And then they just stopped calling me. I sent a text to Hunter. I was like, hey man, I don't know if you put any more thought into what's going on. I'm really excited about the possibilities. And I literally never heard back from them. They just stopped talking to me about it. Man, I don't know what else I can try to do. I want to end my career the right way. I'm faithful and loyal to the WWE. I'm proud of being from there, and I want to do good business with them. But they just don't make it easy, you know? They just don't.
It's an incredible quote from Batista there, from big old Dave. And it's kind of that sort of like enlightening kind of quote that you hear that just like sheds a light on the backstage politics of WWE and what it must be like dealing with them as a company. It's kind of amazing, really. You know, and here he is, like, you'd think as well, as a company, they'd want to be trying to work with Dave because, I mean, he's currently one of the stars, he's on the poster, he's in the credits of what is set to become one of the biggest movies of all time, Avengers Infinity War. It's already passed Justice League in terms of, like, it's only been out for, like, 5 days, at this point. It's coming up to another incredible weekend. It's probably going to do, 1.5 billion, if nothing else, and it could do upwards of that. It could get towards 2 billion if it really pushes itself. It hasn't had its Chinese opening yet. So you'd think that's a sort of, like, they'd be like, he's one of our guys, he's loyal to us, we need to bring him in and do something with him, and try and bring in some of that mainstream appeal.
Yeah, considering all the weird movie promotion things WWE have had over the years, what was it? It was like, it wasn't Fast and Furious, it was another movie that was very much like Fast and Furious a few years ago, and they were going crazy promoting it while Fast and Furious was actually being released with The Rock. And it's like, well, why aren't you doing that
Yeah,
one,
why aren't you doing
which
that one?
actually links back to your product?
To wrestling, yeah, exactly.
And it just feels like, I mean, this is
Sometimes there's just Jeremy Piven movies to promote.
just hanging around Jeremy Piven. I can't wait for Summerfest this year.
Oh, can't wait.
It just, and this is speculation on my part, but it feels like, and this is with the whole Rock and Triple H tension thing that's been rumoured and reported on before.
It's not even just reported; they both said it as much.
Do you want to give us a recap of that before I get into it?
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I don't want to interrupt, but it's less of sort of a rumoured thing that Hunter, Triple H, and The Rock have always said they had a very professional rivalry. They weren't just rivals in the ring; they were also rivals outside of the ring. They were very much coming up at the same time. They were kind of like rising through the mid cards. But you had Triple H had DX, and you had Rock with the Nation of Domination. They were feuding over the Intercontinental title, and then a couple of years later, they're feuding over the WWF Championship. They're the two tippity top guys because Austin was out on the injury shelf. But there was always these stories that Triple H was trying to hold Rock down because he was like, he's not ready for this. He's not ready to be in the main event yet. We need to, ready for the main event, obviously. Look at me. And, he was sort of like doing this and the other, but they weren't sure about The Rock. He hated all of Rock's moves. He hated the people's elbows, so he was trying to bury that and get that kind of put the kibosh on that. And Rock has said that, they've just had this very professional rivalry. And Triple H has said, yeah, we had a professional rivalry. But you got to wonder whether there was something a little bit that's gone on from that since, because The Rock has left WWE and has become one of the biggest movie stars in the entire world. And there's always those stories from WWE that if you leave the company and succeed, you are not looked upon fondly. Rock,
initially,
yeah.
Until you become too big for them to ignore, and they then fall over themselves to work with you again.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So Triple H during this time when Rock was doing like the Scorpion King and stuff like that, Triple H would have a bit in Blade Trinity, a little other crappy part over there. So I mean, I think Triple H is a wrestling guy. I don't think he ever thought I want to make it in the movies, but I think there's probably a bit, but I do genuinely believe the way he operates.
Yeah.
He is a wrestling guy. He's more than content to make everything territorial again.
Him matching Ric Flair's record of world championship reigns is probably more important to him than having a $1 billion movie to his name.
However, that's not to say that he doesn't harbour resentment to people like The Rock and other people wrestlers who leave WWE and find success where he, quite fell on his face a bit and failed. And Batista being the guy that Triple H brought in and, used in his Fortune faction to build up, to get over, and then Batista's like, I'm going to try and, make it in movies for a bit. And that was like 2009 when Batista first left, and WWE did not help him one bit. And he was making all these direct-to-DVD releases. He really took the workhorse route of being an actor. I watched some of his early films as they were coming out because I was interested. And he always had something about him in those movies. The movies weren't good, but he was good in them. And it was just a matter of time. And even now, there's just a decade later after that, there's just this reluctance on WWE's part to even acknowledge that Batista has become a very big deal in the acting world. And I just, this stuff here and the fact that he texted Hunter, this is from the horse's mouth, as it were. This is from Batista. This isn't Wrestling Observer hearsay or PW Insider, I heard from a source.
Or Bruce Pritchard.
It is Batista himself saying, I text Hunter and I have not heard back. And you've got to think, that's been I've not heard back for a while, since January, when they were planning who was going to be Ronda's tag partner.
Can I play devil's advocate and play
away?
Perhaps play the other side. So
only if you do the Pacino impression.
Pacino!
What is the bit in that movie?
Well, there's a swear in there as well. It's when Keanu Reeves is walking around Pacino's flat and he doesn't realise there's a bed there. And he's like, well, where does he F? And Pacino just walks and goes, everywhere! Great. Oh, Devil's Advocate, man. What a film. It's an amazing film. That's my Pacino.
That's your Pacino.
Shouty Pacino.
Chewing scenery Pacino.
He just walks into and goes, give me the scenery. Om nom 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 nom. But yeah, I want to play devil's advocate slightly as well, because this is we are putting our own speculation onto this. Like there is,
we're pulling into the speculation station.
Exactly. You know, there's always kind of like stories to back this up, but it is very much speculation. We don't know what Triple H is really thinking. We don't know what the backstage scenarios are. But to play devil's advocate and to pull into speculation station, Rock was their first choice, but Rock couldn't do it. Batista was their second choice, but then you had the issue of Jason Jordan going out with an injury, and Dean Ambrose had already fallen down with an injury as well. So then you're looking like, well, okay, what can we do with Kurt Angle at WrestleMania? Because Angle will have needed a WrestleMania program. So they were like, well, that's fallen through, so we'll just put him into the Rousey position. I know we had this conversations with Dave, but we'll just move past that because we've got Angle. We don't have to pay him anymore because we're already paying him. That's just some devil's advocate.
And that could also be true. That could. I don't think these things mutually exclusivity out each other. That's a terrible sentence. And it does also play into the end of Survivor Series, where Triple H did turn on Kurt Angle, and then turned on other people.
Did he turn on Kurt Angle?
He definitely turned on Kurt Angle. So Triple H was on Team Raw.
Yeah.
And he beat up... Yeah, he turned on Kurt Angle, then he also turned on Shane McMahon. So it was just a big way to dick on Kurt Angle.
Right. And he did pedigree Jason Jordan the week before or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Do you remember how that all paid off? And like they just rewrote the history and just said that, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn cost SmackDown the match. Dastardly heels.
But so it does tie into all of that as well. But I just think, and you know, Angle, Triple H, and Rousey and Stephanie McMahon was a really blow away match at WrestleMania.
It was the best match of the night.
Yeah, it was the best match of the night, and it's made a star. So we can't argue with that side of things. But I'm just baffled that WWE wouldn't want to grab Batista for this. He's 50 next year, he says later on in this interview. He says, this is probably my last chance of doing a WrestleMania program. I don't want to be the old guy in the ring. I'm in great shape now, but I don't want to be past it. Mm-hmm. And so it's a ticking time bomb. There's a time frame to this. So to have Batista not just for this WrestleMania, for next year's WrestleMania, but to work several dates throughout a year when at this time you don't know if Brock Lesnar's going to be around. WWE's mindset is usually to really go after these people hard, and here's one who's saying, I will happily come back and work for you, and they're like, nah, I'm good actually.
Unless, of course, the other devil's advocate again, playing the other side of things, maybe everywhere. Triple H is thinking, me versus Batista isn't a match that's going to put butts in seats for WrestleMania next year because
when has that stopped him?
Because I've already got a bigger match in play. You know, he's already planned out what his Mania match is for next year, and it's bigger than Dave.
I think
it's Randy Orton.
Yeah. I think he starts with his entrance. And then he works his way backwards.
Have you like our fancy booking warfares.
Was it you who told me that Triple H designs a lot of the logos for NXT stuff?
I did. It was on a podcast.
Yes.
So Triple H, he's like, the guy called him a designer for NXT. Like, he draws all the logos and stuff. So he'd have drawn, like, the CFO logo for Undisputed Era and all this sort of stuff. And he's very much like, you know, a creative guy. And I do know that there was a period in time where they really thought that the Skull King, or whatever the hell they call it, his Skull King nonsense that he has, was going to be like its own line of things. They were going to do like comic books behind it and action figures and all this sort of stuff. But there's really two people in this world that like it, and that is Triple H and Stephanie McMahon.
I love that about Triple H.
Yeah.
That he's just like, you know, I'm the creator. I'm also a super nerd who stays up, you know, like Stephanie's down to, Hannah, can you come and help with the kids? Just a second, Stephanie, I'm finishing my comic book. He's doing these little doodles.
Colouring inside the lines.
The best way to put Undisputed Era, put some yellow in there. I like that yellow. I think that's adorable.
I would just like to think that he went into like this big pitch meeting with the WWE marketing team, and he was like, guys, it's time for us to do Skull King as like a character. We can make these comic books, we can make films, we can make cartoons, we can make action figures. And someone went, mate, it's Skeletor. And he went, oh yeah, it is a little bit.
No, it's totally different from Skeletor, man. No, it's because it's different.
He's got a hat.
It's got a different name. First off, he's called the Skull King.
Yeah.
Poor trips. But even poorer Batista.
Absolutely, yeah. I feel bad for Batista.
So we're just going to quickly sum up the rest of the week's news. How about that news this week?
Saucy news.
Wasn't a big news week, to be honest.
It was dominated by one topic, really.
Yeah, Greatest Royal Rumble Fallout stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and we were worried about doing that as the headline because we thought it's been over a week since the Greatest Royal Rumble. I mean, I'm pretty sure no one really cared about it come Saturday.
Yeah, it's insane, all those crazy stories. There's the Ultimate Warrior story.
That's my favourite one.
There's the fact that Sami Zayn, and in the latest Wrestling Observer newsletter that's literally just come out before we're recording this, Dave Meltzer has said it is why he wasn't booked on. It's because he is of Syrian descent. And Meltzer goes into how the announcers kept on calling this a progressive city. Progressive was the buzzword. And Meltzer said, this is actually regressive because 3 years ago, WWE were actually trying to push Sami Zayn as a Middle Eastern star because he is of Arab descent and he can speak many languages. So he wrestled in Saudi Arabia 3 consecutive nights, three or 4 years ago, and here he is removed from the show because of his ethnicity.
Yes, because
so that is regressive. You are going backwards.
Yeah, because the political landscape within Saudi Arabia and their relationship with Syria is very different now than what it was in 2012.
Yeah, it's all about MBS. I don't want to call him my boy anymore, MBS, because originally I was a bit gung ho for Mohammed bin Salman, but now it's a bit like he's yeah.
We don't know if he's the one as well that when Vince McMahon was making this deal for the Greatest Royal Rumble, as you and I speculate that this was very much a Vince thing. This doesn't feel like it's a Triple H Stephanie project. This is very much a Vince McMahon project. And when he was doing his dealings with, like the way it's described is with one of the princes, so whoever requested this show, they gave him a list of people they wanted to appear. And on that list was The Undertaker. And it was, they didn't give us the full list, but the other names were Yokozuna and the Ultimate Warrior. Because they were just like, that's wrestling that I know. And those are the guys that I want. Not knowing the fact that one of them died a couple of years ago and the other one died almost 18 years ago. And apparently that's the reason why Hiroki Sumi was in the match, because he's a bit like Yokozuna. He's a Japanese sumo gimmick. So it's basically Yokozuna, but we're not going to tell you that it is Yokozuna.
Yeah, we're not lying if we don't say it's not. Other things that happened, there's the Lesnar-Reigns finish. A lot of people are sharing a GIF where Reigns' foot is actually on the ring apron.
Yeah.
And they're saying, oh, well, Lesnar did win, actually, because only one of Reigns' feet hit the ground.
People care about this far too much.
But now WWE have even said that both Reigns' feet touched the ground first. I've watched it. I still think Reigns' feet touch his heels on the floor.
Again, people care too much,
Is it the whole
man.
sole? The whole sole of the boot?
What was the botched finish of this? What was the finish supposed to be?
I don't know how they thought that was going to work. Yeah, so I guess Lesnar's feet maybe would touch the ground first by the force of the cage going a bit further.
Yeah, I was going to say, because last year they did the Braun Strowman Big Show match, which ended with Braun Strowman doing the running power slam to Big Show through the cage, and they announced Braun as the winner. And it's sort of the same sort of thing here. Reigns did the offensive move, but the other guy won. And it's how Vince Russo became WCW champion. Actually, Goldberg speared him through the cage, and they was like, well, because Vince Russo left the cage first, he's declared the winner. It's why these finishes aren't always that good.
Plus, what we're all kind of ignoring, and Botchmania's Matthew pointed this out in his excellent Best Botches of the Week article on WrestleTalk.com, no one's talking about the heinous head bump Reigns took in this, because he effectively DDTs himself on the cage wall, on the ground, falling through the ropes.
Very true.
He probably spikes himself down. It looks brutal.
Yeah.
But poor guy, everyone... Reigns is such an he's got the most thankless job in wrestling.
Poor
really,
lad.
apart from maybe John Laurinaitis back in the talent relations days. Just one other thing, I incorrectly attributed a quote from PW Insider in the WrestleTalk news earlier this week about WWE stars expressing their unhappiness backstage over the Greatest Royal Rumble thing. That was on PW Insider. I said it was Mike Johnson who wrote it. It was actually their other reporter, Dave Scherer. So Still,
It's still PW Insider.
Still PW Insider, but I said Mike Johnson by accident.
Yeah.
And how about that Chris Jericho stuff? This is your wheelhouse.
Yes, this is like sort of a back-to-back story, I suppose. PW Insider are reporting that Chris Jericho is returning back to New Japan. Jericho earlier this year said that he was done with New Japan. They were trying to work out deals and dates. He wanted to work with them again, but a deal could not be reached. And someone asked him on Twitter, "Are you doing anything in New Japan?" And he said, "Nope, that's done."
And I can't believe. I can't believe I actually thought, oh, okay, it's.
I actually think that at that time the deal, but like a deal has now been sorted out because I mean New Japan are known for their long-term booking. They're known for like sensible booking, and they did this like deal where he attacked Tetsuya Naito at New Year's Dash. And then have never followed up on it. That seems like such an un-New Japan thing to do. It's a very WWE thing to do, but it's sort of thing that you just wouldn't expect out of New Japan.
Especially when they were in the States doing their show.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So it feels like they were trying to work out deals and they just couldn't. But now, rumour has it, they have worked out deals. We'll certainly know anyway, because apparently he's going to debut like this weekend at New Japan shows this weekend.
So is it for Dominion? Dominion's this weekend?
No, it's Wrestling Dontaku is this weekend.
Right.
And then they're going to set up and then they're doing Dominion next month in Osaka.
Because it's Road to Dontaku.
Yeah.
I hate those road shows. they're just like glorified house shows. But but there's some other New Japan news. Well, I was going to say at the Road to Dontaku show that's just finished before we came in here, Marty Scurll and the Young Bucks, your new Never 6-man openweight champions.
Lovely stuff.
It's a bit nice.
Bullet Club is fine. And tying into other New Japan news, reportedly, their ticket sales for their next show they're doing in the United States, which is going to be in July, is not doing great. So when they did their show earlier this year, when they did Strong Style of Old from Long Beach, they sold out their 5,000 seat in 20 minutes. There was all these reports of just like, they need to book bigger buildings because like you sold out 5,000 seats in 20 minutes. Like that's a ridiculous thing. You should have really had the foresight to book a bigger building. So they did book a bigger building for their next show, for the G1 special. That it's not the actual G1 special, but they're doing a G1 special show in San Francisco at the Cow Palace, which is reportedly set up for 14,000 seats when you have a pro wrestling event there. And according to PW Insider, they sold 3,300 tickets in their first full day, which is, it's not as good as selling out 5,000 seats in 20 minutes. And they're basically, New Japan are expecting that they will basically reach a plateau of 4,000, and then that will be how many tickets they'll have sold. But the report is they are reaching out to a big star to try and bring them back in to try and help bolster ticket sales. So I wonder if that big star is Jericho, and that's basically these two stories are linked together. And that's how Jericho and New Japan have reached this deal.
Maybe. I don't know what. I just thought Goldberg.
Well, I mean,
when I heard Big Star, and knowing that Goldberg had those New Japan talks, was it?
Oh yeah,
last year,
that's
late
right.
last year.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, that would be Goldberg wouldn't have to travel as far. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so Cow Palace was 2004. No Way Out.
No Way Out.
Yeah,
yes, absolutely. Yeah. So it's kind of like, it's some news for New Japan. It's not great news for New Japan, but they are actively trying to sort it out. One of the, I thought was a really interesting part of this, though, is apparently Ticketmaster have put aside 1,000 tickets for the show already for NJPW club members, which is like it, but they're all in Japan. So it's very unlikely that they're going to be buying, 1,000 people are going to be buying these tickets and flying over to the US, but they have to hold them just in case they do want them.
Yeah, it's like part of the club membership,
yes,
isn't it?
That's
not
right.
Not the
yeah.
Bullet Club membership.
No,
but the New
or
Japan
Honor
fan
Club membership.
Yes,
but yeah, so that's some New Japan news for you.
I don't have any other news, but Keith Lee is still seeming to be going to WWE.
Yes, Dave Meltzer first reported this in March, that Keith Lee and Walter, the man that was on my T-shirt, were both offered WWE contracts, and Walter said that he he denied that he offered, and as did Keith Lee. But since then, Keith Lee has lost a lot of the titles that he has had, the titles that he won quite recently, and it's now being reported by PW. Who's on,
yeah, so PW Torch,
the Torch
have said that both men were offered contracts. Keith Lee's taking his. He's going to be starting in NXT in June, which is around the same time as the Chicago TakeOver show is, so you probably expect to see him in the audience there. But Volta, however, what was definitely, well, they say he was offered a contract, but he's accepting bookings in September. So he might not have taken it, which is good for you if you don't take a WWE contract.
Absolutely, yeah, but they do not take that sort of news lightly, though. They will hold that against him for the rest of the time. In fact, it could very well be that Alexander Wolf doesn't get a push off the back of it.
What was really interesting is PW Torch went into how Keith Lee's kind of tryout match at WrestleMania Access Weekend was received against Chris Hero. Apparently, it got mixed reviews from WWE officials because they kind of saw him as someone who just did moves. The quote was, because he did moves. And I think you mean it's just because he does big move and then big move. I happen to love that.
Oh, well, he's an absolute money-making star, Keith Lee. He's one of the best in the industry at the moment. He's one of the best big men that's currently working. He's got charisma out the wazoo.
Exactly. You do a move and then you do it like he walks around doing this really cool body movement thing.
Bask in his glory, man. Absolutely bask in his glory.
And his promos, his voice are just superb.
He's great.
But Luke, he did some moves.
Oh, well, just moves, man. Isn't it? That's all you do is just moves.
But they said, I think it was Wade Keller. No, it was someone else. I won't confuse reporters on websites again. PW Torch then went on to say that what they've heard from people in NXT is when you go into NXT, you've just got to really listen to all the trainers' advice and show that you're implementing it. And once you build up a bit of trust like that, after a few months, they'll give you a bit more creative freedom on your character and you can play with that.
Interesting.
And that they give two examples. Leo Rush is one who was uncoachable, or hard to coach was the quote. And he very much struggled in those early days. There were reports that he might be released, especially after that Emma tweet that he had. But Ricochet has apparently been incredibly easy to work with, and he's made friends with everyone, and they're already letting him have more input into his character off the back of that.
And look at TV. Who is on TV? At the moment, Ricochet is on. Who hasn't been seen on TV in quite some time? Leo Rush.
It just I love that WWE are investing in their future. But I do get a sense, and you see this in multiple industries, that when you get a bunch of old-timey guys, which is like the trainers there from the previous generation, and they get these young, exciting talents in from around the world, those old-timey guys, with the best intentions, I think, but probably somewhere in the subconscious, they do need to justify their position a bit. Like, nah, mate, that's not how you do it. That's not how you do it. But sometimes the game's changed. Sometimes the art form has moved on, and slowing these guys down or making them work for the camera and doing this storytelling, like, all the criticism always comes, we tell stories here, you've got to be a storyteller. I have seen matches from Ricochet, from Keith Lee, which have the best stories I've ever seen, far beyond anything I've ever seen in WWE. But you get these old guys who have to justify their position in the performance centers, despite the wrestling move advancing since then. And of course it would. The wrestling landscape now is far different from when they were active.
I completely agree with you. I mean, the Keith Lee match that you and I were lucky enough to be in attendance for last year against Tomohiro Ishii, that was a whole match that was built around one or the other trying to hit a suplex. Like, that was the whole match, was trying to build up to this one spot where they hit a suplex. And it was like a 20-25 minute match, all built around that. And it was an incredible piece of storytelling, built around moves.
Yeah, like 4 moves. And you look at the main event scene over the last few massive WWE pay-per-views, those Brock Lesnar Roman Reigns matches are just moves.
Just hitting,
big move, big move, big move.
Finishes.
John Cena, Triple H are now just big move, big move. That's the idea of the big pay-per-view match. So it's just it's frustrating to hear that when you go to NXT, you've got to, I know it makes total sense, but the fact that you've got to play ball to then be an individual is just, and that's why you flatten everyone out into the same style sometimes.
Yeah.
But should we get on with some crap gimmicks?
Speaking of flattening people out and perhaps making them worse than what they originally were, talk about a segue there. Crap gimmicks. If you've got a crap gimmick that you want to submit to the crap gimmick roster, which is our little jokey federation filled with rubbish gimmick wrestlers. And if you think you have something that you think is crap enough to be part of our roster, you email me at luke@wrestletalk.com and I will pick out some of my best ones. Bearing in mind, I just want to say, because I get a lot of messages from people saying like, you haven't read mine out. I get sent a lot of these, and we only do this once a week, and we only get to do like 3 of them. So I'm sorry if I don't get to yours. I do try to get to them all.
Maybe they're just not crap enough.
Maybe they're too good.
That's kind of a compliment.
Yeah, maybe they're too good.
I'm going to add in another thing.
Ooh.
And because we were talking before we came in here, we want to make this Saturday. Now we've changed up the WrestleRamble format where you've got the Tuesday Raw review, Wednesday SmackDown, and then this. But we want to try and make the Saturday one kind of a magazine-y show. And for magazine-y shows, we need jingles.
Oh, I like the way you're going with this.
So, for crap gimmicks, the Swaff Nation love crap gimmicks. The Podswafters love crap gimmicks. Why don't you send in some jingle pitches?
Yeah.
I mean, but because most of them will be bad. But maybe that's not you. We have, off the back, like, who was it? Just off the back of a podcast joke. So we got a few really genuinely good renditions of the WrestleTalk done in the theme of DuckTales.
Yeah, it's good. Well, I can't remember.
Pooh Bear.
I can't remember how this came along, but we started talking about TV theme songs that we liked when we were kids, like DuckTales, like Pinky and the Brain, Winnie the Pooh, and all this sort of stuff. And then people started sending in songs about WrestleTalk to those themes, and we got an absolutely phenomenal one. Based around DuckTales. In fact, I may actually have that as the opening to this podcast. I may have it in there.
It's really good.
It's so good.
So if you can write one, or you can adapt a song that's already in existence, or you can come up with a new crappy jingle on a GarageBand, GarageBand on your
Audition
Apple device. Send it in to luke@wrestletalk.com. I don't want to trawl through your crap.
Keep them short though. It's a jingle. Jingles are meant to be short.
Yeah, like 30 seconds max?
Yeah. Max is very much 30 seconds.
And do you want them to put something in the title to show that it's...
Crap gimmick jingle.
Well, that's very descriptive. What's our first crap gimmick,
So our
Luke?
first one comes in from Dominic Bishop, who has suggested Nico Teen, a heel wrestler whose main gimmick is that of an obnoxious, self-aggrandizing vapor who berates the crowd week to week for smoking with the catchphrases, "I am bad for your health," and "Nicotine kicks ash." He makes his entrance with the entire arena floor being doused in smoke machines a la The Undertaker, and whilst on his way to the ring, vapes aggressively, blowing massive clouds of vape into the faces of marks and fans alike. In the ring, he uses a variety of dirty tactics to defeat his foes, such as the aforementioned e-cigarette illegal weapon strikes, a Tajiri-style poison mist, which of course does nothing as it's merely water vapor, and also distracts the ref so he can pour his bottle of e-liquid onto the canvas, so his opponents trip and fall on it like it's a slippery surface, like the wet bandits from Home Alone. This allows for comedy spots and shenanigans.
Yes, this is good. As soon as I was 2 sentences into this, I thought, oh man, you got to do a poison mist spot with the smoke, and then boom, it's in there. However, I would modify it slightly, because you've put there that it does nothing as it's merely water vapor. It's wrestling. The person who is hit by this should sell it crazily.
100%
And you can
agree.
also, depending on whether this particular vape has an orange citrus flavour to it, that would have a different impact on the victim than if it was lemony fresh. Well, I guess citrus is also a lemony thing.
Yeah,
Well,
but I think
cinnamon.
I think you could do it differently.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So those would be like different types of kryptonite, how they affect Superman.
One of my D&D group is a vapor, and the vapor.
Which one?
He is what role is he currently playing at the moment?
Do I know him?
Gary. He was on my stag do.
Okay. Want to put him down as a vape man.
He's very much a vape man. But yeah, so he's a big vape man, and it's lovely sitting next to him while playing D&D as well, because you just get the smell of Skittles for the entire time. And if there's one thing in this world that I love, it's the smell of Skittles.
Would you like to sit next to someone who is consuming a bag of gaseous sweets? I've never understood shisha. I've never understood that as a thing. It makes me bloated and hiccupy, and I just don't get why would what. It's just a flavour. There's no consumable aspect to it.
No, I mean, my ex-girlfriend, a friend of hers, was a hardcore cigarette smoker, but he then moved to e-cigarettes and vaping, and then he just said, so I just got addicted to that instead. So I haven't actually really changed anything about myself. I'm just now addicted to something different.
I kind of understand it, but I do think it's rather hilarious. In Britain, there are many vape shops, aren't there?
Well, there's one just down the road.
On corners of high streets, which is a weird thing. There are no good coffee shops on our local high street, but there is a vape store where I can get the best customizable gears. I just don't understand that surely there are too many vape stores to people who are interested in vaping.
Well, quite possibly,
a very it's like a fad store that some people I'm into vaping, I'm going to open up a vape store. And I've never seen one that's called Vaping Bad. It makes so much sense for them to call it that. Anyway, I can see how they get into because I understand if you get really into it, you're into the gears, the way certain things work and the mechanics of it. Mm-hmm. But for me, not for me.
It's not for me either. I'm a former smoker myself, but I never moved on to vaping. It's never something that's appealed to me, other than the fact that it smells delicious. It's not really the sort of thing I'm particularly into. Tar. I'll just have a cup of tea instead.
Tar. Well, that's actual cigarettes.
Well, I'm going to say, which is one of the reasons why I had to stop in the end.
So what are we doing for nicotine?
Nicotine. Well, I like nicotine. I think I like the entrance aspect of it in particular. I like the breathing vape smoke into the face of fans as an obnoxious heel. I like nicotine.
I'd sign him. Yeah, it needs some work though. I feel like there's something missing. It's not like a crap gimmick. Great.
No, exactly. Torvus T has suggested the Gent is an English wrestler who is most definitely from the upper classes of the 1970s. His ring attire is tweed, and he's always accompanied to the ring by his butler, a classically trained butler of the Artemis Fowl School, to the theme tune Englishman in New York. His style...
How does that go again? This is the Sting one.
Yeah.
We listened to it earlier.
Yeah.
What's it?
I don't remember. You did the best impression of it, but I can't remember how you do it now. Because I whenever I do to sing it, it sounds like I don't know how the song goes because it's like da 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 da.
Yeah. Do da 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 da.
There you go.
It's my scatting days coming back.
His style is a mix of boxing and mat technician, and his finisher is tea time. It might be gimmick infringement from another wrestling YouTube channel. Yeah, perhaps. The tea time is a sleeper hold where once the wrestler passes out, he stands and stops the referee from calling the match over. He calls his butler, who presents him with a perfect cup of tea. Once he has finished his tea, he goes for the pin by standing on his unconscious opponent. If the opponent starts to wake up while he is drinking his tea, he passes the cup to his butler and smacks their head into the mat, then goes back to finish his tea. However, this is still caused a few losses as some of his opponents play possum. Now, I think the problem I've got with Torvus T's The Gent is he's overthought it. There's a really simple gimmick within here, but the finish is too convoluted.
Yeah,
the finish does not work for me.
I understand where you're coming from, but I also do like the visual of this cocky heel drinking the tea, being brought the tea by the butler.
You see, that's all the stuff I like, but that for me is spots throughout the match. It's not his finish.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, because it would take away from the impact. It would just make everything comedy.
Yes.
And while this is a stupid promotion, we are not purely a comedy promotion.
Absolutely not. And once again, I do want to put a bit of a call out. We get a lot of heels. Don't get a lot of baby faces.
And those are the best ones. It's hard to do a crap baby face.
Exactly. Those are the ones that are hardest to get right.
It's also quite Jack Gallagher. Gallagher.
Yeah.
Gallagher.
I think I'm going to pass on it for now.
Yeah.
Maybe a developmental deal, but I'm not overly convinced on it.
Sorry,
just yet.
Torvus.
Yes.
Cool name though.
Cool name indeed.
Torvus.
John Solitude
has a Norse god.
John Solitude has suggested.
John Solitude's another great name.
I don't know if that's his real name.
It's
what his email name was, but I think he plays in a band, and I'm like, oh, maybe it's like an onstage persona.
No, I think he sent this email in via carrier pigeon, electronic man. He lives out in the woods.
Yep.
Yeah.
Could
John
be.
Solitude.
But anyway, his wrestler's name is called Chance, and he describes, yep, just Chance, like other one-word famous people such as Drake, Madonna, Prince, and the entire late 2000s WWE Divas roster.
Nice. That's a solid gag.
Solid gag.
Much better than my Inspector Gadget claw one I was going to make from the Matthew Broderick.
The Matthew Broderick. Just Claw.
Like Madonna. Why is that in my head all the time when I think of one-word names?
I don't know.
Who was it? Rupert Everett.
It was Rupert Everett, yeah. Did you ever see the second Inspector Gadget movie they did with the lad from Third Rock from the Sun? French Stewart.
Yeah, I saw the trailer. I haven't seen the movie, unfortunately.
Yeah, I went to the cinema to see Inspector Gadget because, fun fact for you, I loved Inspector Gadget when I was a kid.
Same here.
Oh man, what a show! Ba-ba-da-ba-da, Inspector. What a theme song that is as well.
Looking back on it, I can see why I liked it so much. It's because it was like the lore seems so deep, but you would only ever get like a surface level of it. But all that claw stuff at the end of each episode, I'd be like, no, but seriously, I want to know who that is. But there was no Wikipedia. I couldn't watch the next episode on Spotify. Still can't do that.
Still can't do that, mate. We're waiting for that technology to catch up with us. Oh, what a great show, though. Yeah. Okay, Chief, I'm on my way. It's a great character. Anyway, so his gimmick. He is possessed by an evil coin, with every decision decided via a coin flip throughout his wrestling career. If a GM gives him an option for a mid-card title or the top prize title match, he has to flip a coin to make his choice. When his opponent is down and out, he has to flip a coin to see what move he is going to do next. Whether or not Chance is a face or a heel in this match is, you guessed it, decided via the coin flip which he must use. No matter what he is at the mercy of the coin. His catchphrase, everything's left to chance, creepily said by the cursed coin.
What do you think?
I mean, well, it's Two-Face is the major issue.
There's other that you can only get two outcomes off of a coin. There are lots of wrestling moves. So I feel like this is something you would need a manager for, where the manager would be like, leg drop or splash.
Oh, that's great. I like that.
And then have to do it, because otherwise you wouldn't get any of that in the performance. It would just be a guy flipping a coin and then doing a move. You wouldn't know him cycling through the many different types of wrestling moves there are.
Exactly. So maybe Chance is this manager, this managerial role, and he has a cursed person who he has put a curse upon with the coin or whatever it is.
That's good.
It's not
lighting me. It's not lighting our world on
fire.
I
completely agree. To be honest, like this email more or less got it just for that early joke right at the start, which was a 5-star joke.
And John Solitude.
And finally, we've got a very quick mailbag segment for you. Oh, hello.
If you've got some mailbag jingles...
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Luke at WrestleTalk.com. What should they title that?
Mailbag jingle.
Okay, there you go. Write that down.
You don't want to forget it, because if it's not called that, then I probably won't read it. It will just get archived, because Google Mail... I'm quite frivolous with frugal mail.
Frugal mail. That's what Mick Foley uses.
Anywho, so... If you want to send us a question for us to answer here on the Saturday WrestleRamble, you have to become one of our pledge hammers, which are people who donate to it or pledge to us on Patreon. Any dollar amount will get you the ability to send a question in to the WrestleRamble, but a $5 backing will get you access to WrestleRamble Extra, where we review wrestling pay-per-views from history. This week has just gone up, WrestleMania X7, arguably the best WrestleMania of all time, which is a podcast that clocks in at 4 hours and 38 minutes. It is actually 38 minutes longer than the pay-per-view itself.
We've got no filter. I'm sorry, folks. We criticise WWE for putting out too much content, and then we go and record a 4-hour, 38-minute podcast
And
episode.
It is a lot of nonsense in there.
Yeah.
A lot of nonsense. What is your highlight of the episode, though?
That time where we reveal who Byron Saxton is.
Oh, well...
you'll have to listen to the podcast and pledge to find that out.
And if you are a $10 backer, or if you want to become a $10 backer, in a couple of weeks we'll be posting up our next episode of Ramble Club, where we review wrestling matches from outside of the WWE main roster sphere. Anyway, so on to the mailbag. Matt Noble has emailed in. Matt Noble has
another good name.
He's actually just come back to being a pledge hammer, so he's wanted to
welcome
back, Matt. Do you think to get to the point?
You still got it.
Do you think we'll ever get to a point where not only are pay-per-views Raw and SmackDown shows, but will also feature from time to time on the card a match from NXT?
I like the idea, but I don't want more matches on the pay-per-views.
Well, what if it's in place of a match? Like, what if a NXT match was on the card of Backlash instead of Brawny the Strowman and Bobby Lashley versus Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn?
I think that's a good idea. I don't think I'd have it every month. Or maybe I would.
Well, the problem...
There's an argument to having an NXT match on Raw. I don't know why they don't do that to promote the network. It's like the network is now this thing that WWE have to have alongside the main broadcast television. You know what? You've won me over. If it's not adding an extra match to the already way too long running order, and it means something, and it's presented correctly, yes, I would like that a lot.
The only issue that you would have, however, is that NXT tapes a lot in advance. So you would have to try and work out the storylines that you could tell to be able to put onto a pay-per-view match without that then interfering with stuff you've taped that happens after said pay-per-view match.
I'm sure they can make that work. They're clever folks scheduling-wise.
They certainly are clever folks. But I do agree with you as well that I think that WWE needs to do more to kind of advertise what NXT is and try and make people want to watch it, and the only way to watch that is to become a network subscriber, kind of like what we're doing with WrestleRamble Extra. I hasten to add,
it's
my favorite example of WWE not really getting this was when NXT was like kind of in its infamousy on the WWE Network. Obviously, NXT had run before this, but when it was in its WWE Network era, and it was like Charlotte and Bayley and Sasha Banks and all this in their women's division, Charlotte had a pay-per-view match, like a takeover match that was coming up. So they had her on the main roster, losing to Natalya in Charlotte's hometown. Like, how do you do that?
Well,
like, what were you thinking?
It's just the most WWE thing ever, isn't it?
It just made no sense to me. But sorry, you were going to say.
Well, I was going to say it's like 205 Live has suffered a similar fate, and not that apparently it's much better now. I don't really watch it, but at least try and promote it on Raw or SmackDown. I feel like there's nothing on SmackDown anymore. They've been completely cut from Raw. There's no cruiserweight matches there. So it's just these separate entities.
Man, we'll one day look back on the purple rope era of Raw. This time last year, you and I were at a Raw show where we had to watch them change the colour of the ropes.
Furiously.
Oh, they were very quick at it. Jared Conitzer asks, I'm not sure how to phrase this question. Good luck. How long can Elias go without a title before he loses legitimacy? Or how long can he go without a title? That's basically the same question. How long without a title before he loses, or how long can he go without a title? That's the same question. He obviously has the ability to be a 6 to 10 month IC champ with some great babyface chasers.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's difficult though because Raw doesn't have enough titles right now. The Universal title is off wherever with Brock, which makes a kind of mid-card, top-of-the-card vacuum. And when you look at everyone else on their roster, a lot of other people should have it over Elias. Like Finn Balor should have it over Elias. Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns is even Braun Strowman should have the Intercontinental title, really. Elias will be fine doing what he does at the moment. And it's not like the wrestling part is the bit everyone likes to see about Elias.
Yeah.
So I do get your concerns, but the landscape of Raw is very odd, skewered at the moment.
Absolutely. I agree. I think that having a title will help Elias, but it's not like he really needs a title right now. But like when the time comes and he does go up against someone like a Seth Rollins for the Intercontinental Championship, I mean, they look exactly the same, so it'll be very difficult to tell while the matches are going on. So, but it'll be fun to watch nonetheless.
Elias has got a fuller face.
That's how it is.
He's got a fuller face.
They've just got chest hair, black pants, long black hair, and big black beards.
Oh, if Elias wrestles in that kimono.
And the kimono, well, that's how you got to do it, really. Yeah, it's why they've not booked this feud just yet. And lastly, from Laura, let's see this surname
All
here.
right, it's fine. That sneeze has been coming for 10 minutes. Oh,
that's what she
said.
That
was amazing.
ECK.
Oh, yes, what a rush.
ECKERLE.
Eckerly.
Yeah.
Laura Eckerly.
Laura Eckerly. I do apologise, Laura, if we got that wrong. Let us know on Patreon. Recently, I found myself in a position where I questioned WWE's standpoint when it comes to the women's evolution. Now, this was posted before the Greatest Royal Rumble. Now, with the Greatest Royal Rumble approaching, where do cultural differences to female wrestlers are allowed to seem like the company's taking a step back? Being a female myself, I have to wonder, though, does the women's evolution only entail to in-ring talent? Where are the female referees? release the female commentators, etc. With talents like Renee Young, very suitable for commentary, why bother bringing back Jonathan Coachman? I feel when it gets to the glass ceiling, the WWE is very limited to their in-ring performers, whilst not acting loyal to them, as the Greatest Royal Rumble proves. My question is now, what do you believe has to happen in WWE and the wrestling industry in general to acknowledge females in a more dominant and to be more dominant in a male-dominated so commentary, day-to-day basis, and not just occasion when it suits them, like the Mae Young Classic. Luke and Ollie, you guys rock. Keep up the great work. It's highly appreciated. Sorry for butchering your email towards the end there, Laura. But yeah, it's a very interesting point because they are promoting this women's evolution, but it is very much just because we have women wrestlers doing stuff now.
Well, what I like about this email is that it's got a very simple answer. This is not a huge discussion that needs to be had with loads of points. It's just do it better, WWE.
And they have got a female referee now down in NXT, and she is working. She is training. She is one, but it is a starting point. It's like with the argument for WWE going over to Saudi Arabia. It's a start. You have to make your first step in order to progress further. It's a potential argument. On the commentary side of things, I always wondered why they never used Renee Young in a commentary role. She did use commentary on NXT for a little bit, but what I have been told on several occasions when I brought this up is that Renee Young doesn't want to do commentary. She likes doing the backstage interviews. She likes doing shows on the network. She's not interested in doing week-to-week commentary, which is why they brought back Jonathan Coachman, I guess.
Also, doing commentary is a completely different skill set to everything else. I've seen people do it, and it's just incomprehensibly difficult. A lot of people always say on the YouTube comments, "Oh, Ollie and Luke should commentate for WWE," and we're like, I have no idea. You would make great commentators. Thank you for thinking that, but we have no idea. It's so far removed from everything else. You've got so many things to keep in mind when you're doing it. So that's not necessary. But that's not really the point. That was just an example you used as Renee. I always thought Paige would be better as a commentator, but she is in an authority figure position. It's a difficult one. What do you believe has to happen in the wrestling industry to put females in more dominant male and roles? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like what you're seeing at the moment with engineering jobs and more technical based jobs, and across like science, maths, and all those. The problem is that men seem to be a lot more interested in those areas, whereas ladies tend, on average, overall, looking at the entire population, they just tend to go to more jobs that aren't just focused on sitting in front of something and obsessively working on something. Overall, women appear to be more interested in working with other people and having more collaborative-based jobs. And that this is backed up by research in the Scandinavian countries as well. So it's like maybe there's a problem where wrestling is you're going to get 90% of job applications are going to be from men. Yeah. So, and what you don't want to do then is just start giving people jobs based on their gender rather than the merit. But that's not to say that a lot more should be done in equalising the opportunities and showcasing women for their actual talents more than just like they are eye candy, or we can do that, like we can just put them here. Like Beth Phoenix is not a good commentator, but she's been put there as a woman. Same thing can be made for Coachman, Booker T, etc. Whoever's on that third position in the commentary teams to make it more racially balanced. Like people should be it should be done on merit, not on identity.
Yeah, and I used to run a website. I got to help run a website. You and I have done stuff for WrestleTalk as well. But when you kind of put out these applications, because I always think that there aren't enough female voices in film journalism, particularly in an online landscape where it is a very, very male-dominated thing. I think that YouTube wrestling commentary is very male-dominated as well. And I'd love to hear some more female voices. But when we do ever put out applications, things we get a lot of predominantly male applicants. When I used to advertise for writers on a movie website that I was running, every time we'd advertise, it was always predominantly male. Like 98% of the applicants that would come forward would be male. So it is one of the things. Like it's my wife has sort of argued before that it's a perhaps it's a encouragement thing. Like we should be encouraging more. And I definitely think there is very much an argument for that. And I think that's an excellent point. And it is something like I was watching a really fascinating show they did on BBC Two a couple of weeks ago where they were trying to they try to create a gender fluid school. Like, so it's like apparently like from the ages of sort of like 5 and 6, that is when a child is told this is what boys do and this is what girls do, and then those sort of lessons are then just carried on into their teenage and adult lives. You know, boys wear blue, girls wear pink. You know, that's from birth. Like, you know, they sort of do that. Boys wear T-shirts with dinosaurs and cars. Girls wear T-shirts with unicorns and princesses. Girls read these sorts of books. Boys read these sorts of books. And it's trying to remove that to try and make everything seem just completely equal. And when doing that, maybe that will create these sorts of avenues. But this is very much a non-wrestling thing we've done. But that's kind of what I think it is. It is because the question is, you know, what has to happen in WWE and the wrestling industry. It almost feels like that is what needs to change. It is more opportunities coming forward, but more women putting themselves forward for these opportunities, perhaps.
And unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen for another generation, because I see what happens with Bayley now, and Bayley walking out and hugging those kids, and we get sent clips of people who watch WrestleTalk's kids, young girls, really enjoying Sasha Banks' entrance and stuff like that. And that's awesome. And hopefully those are the women who are going to grow up with these positive female role models in wrestling, which is a very new thing for WWE. If you look back at the last 2-3 decades, hopefully in 5 or 6 years' time, those girls who have become women will still love wrestling enough to then try and get into the industry, and you'll have a larger pool of people to choose from across genders. So hopefully, unfortunately, this isn't going to change anytime soon. And if it does, it will just be a surface thing. But in 5-10 years, maybe it will be a bit more substantial. But that's all we've got time for today on our... Well, we've got exactly an hour, Luke.
I mean, we were going to do an unboxing as well, but we've run out of time.
But click the videos that have just appeared on our laps to catch up with the latest WrestleTalk videos, and subscribe to this channel so you never miss a future episode. And this little box here, which is where you can subscribe to the podcast version on iTunes. You can subscribe to it elsewhere. Just search for it in your podcast provider, and that has an exclusive intro and outro to each episode, which is totally free. This has been Luke Owen. I've been Ollie Davis, and that was Rambling.